March 24th and March 25th. I have webinars and race on those 2 days. So there's 10 to 3, so good luck. Say it's not, that was what I was going to ask, because it's not a full day, but 10 to 3.
All right.
I used to see this.
Can y'all hear me? There you go. All right, it's a few minutes after 5. I'm kind of sitting in. We have both Will and Ernie online, and I'm gonna kind of sit here and help. So we'll call this meeting to order.
Just like to welcome everyone to the FMAC meeting tonight. As Skip already said, we do have the chair, Ernest Bowden. He's online here, and we do have Associate Commissioner Will Bransom online as well, but Skip has volunteered to be able to run the meeting in person just because it goes a little bit smoother. But we will have these two available to vote and participate in the conversation online. So I don't really have any updates or anything like that from the committee. I just want to go around and do introductions so that we have on the record who's available here.
I'm Alex Aspinwall.
Alex Perez.
George Trice.
Chris Ludford.
Skip Feller.
Tom Powers.
John Bello.
Mike Lightfoot.
And Mark Sanford.
And of course, we do have Ernie Bowden and Will Bransom online. You have a copy of the agenda. Does anyone not have a copy of the agenda or need one? All right, and if Skip, you want to run through the minutes.
All right, I guess we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So the minutes are approved.
And we do have a pretty ambitious agenda. We have 4 major items to get through. So we need to move through them rather quickly, so we meet that 7 o'clock deadline. And of course, we do have the ability for public comment and anything not on the agenda towards the end here. So first up, I will turn this over to Alexa to talk about Black Sea Bass.
Good evening, everyone. So before Black Sea Bass, just an announcement of a new resource available for our commercial watermen. Jamie Hogg in the Shellfish Division put together a planning guide for estate planning for commercial licenses. So I'm sure many of the commercial watermen have had to do transfers, worked with our staff to get those through. The staff also often help with families trying to figure out how to handle licenses after a waterman passes away. So this is a resource for the families to help figure out what they can transfer, what documentation they need, but it's also a resource for advanced planning for watermen who may want to kind of figure out in advance what needs to be made available to make things easier. So that is available. We have printed copies in the back. They're available on our website. This is a screenshot from our homepage. Right under commercial fishing, there's the estate planning guide. Oh.
Drag it over.
Sorry, folks, just trying to get this to advance. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So this is the guide. What licenses and quotas are transferable, documentation needed. There's also a piece with who to contact if you have questions or need help going through the process. This is the screenshot from our homepage. Under commercial fishing, there's the estate planning guide. And there's also a companion piece to this for shellfish for transferring lease grounds. So these are available if for anyone who needs them.
For when we die.
I mean, I'd say if, but you know, there's 2 things very certain. So we're talking about Black Sea Bass next. We actually have 2 items we're going to be talking about, both with recreational. First, we're going to be talking about a liberalization for our regular sea bass season, and then the usual February season adjustments that we make every time we have February season. So as part of the specification cycle, in December of last year, ASMFC and the Mid-Atlantic Council voted to liberalize black sea bass recreational fishery coastwide by 20%. The board later clarified liberalizations by region to address perceived inequity in regulations. And the southern region, which is Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina, was granted a 16.5% liberalization. And so the respective members of the technical committee from those states have been working together to put together options that will achieve that. So our current regular season, which excludes the open February season and also doesn't include any closures for February payback, is May 15th through July 15th, and then July 27th through December 31st, a 13-inch minimum size limit, and a 15-fish bag limit. So that July 16th through July 26th closure was something we took, I want to say, 2 years ago due to a required reduction in the recreational fishery. So our two options for liberalization, both will open that mid-season closure. The first is to open the season May 1st through December 31st, drop to a 12.5-inch minimum size limit, keep the 15-fish bag limit. The second option is to open April 1st through December 31st, keep the 13-inch minimum size limit, as well as the 15-fish bag limit. These options, we're looking for the committee's recommendations, we're looking for public input, but our options may depend on other regions' choices in order to not exceed 20% coast-wide. It's a bit of a balancing act. All states must declare management measures to ASMFC by April 1st, and then this change in the season would go before the commission, the VMRC, at their April meeting. So again, looking for input. There's they both have an earlier season. One has an even earlier season. The other has a lower minimum size limit. And I will say that Delaware and Maryland have already chosen the May 1st through December 31st option. So option 1.
Skip, question. Is this commercial season and recreational?
Just recreational.
Where is the February season?
That will be my next part of the presentation.
But the February season will subtract from whatever this is when it happens.
Yes. And I'll also be
Been on-
asking the committee's
Having
opinions.
been on one very successful February black sea bass season, keeping up with 12.5 inches and then having to go to 13 inches and back and forth is confusing.
You mean between Maryland and
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes, keeping it one size would be a lot easier.
Anybody else?
Have any charter guys inputted on this?
Most we've heard from the charter industry is they do want to open the season earlier than we have been, with which both of these achieve.
How is that gonna work out if the commission's meeting is not until, when is that, in April?
21st.
So how would it open on April 1st if if they're not deciding until the 21st?
So if the regulation is effective May 1st, the season would open May 1st.
Right,
But
but
typically we set these specifications for 2 years. So in 2027, we'd likely be starting at the April 1st.
but this year, since the meeting's the 21st, it wouldn't open on
Yeah, the
1st.
timing just didn't quite work out.
Alexa, do you have any comments as to like what Maryland and Delaware, reason why they chose May 1st through December 31st? You know?
As far as I'm aware, they want to prioritize decreasing the minimum size limit.
Okay.
And that's true. They wanted the 12.5 inches.
Alexa, this is Will. I have something in the other.
Yes, Will?
Yeah, You know, I hear some of the comments, the idea of changing to a 12.5 inch minimum size, I'm not sure I'd go along with that. Whether you open it April 1st or May 1st, I think no matter what season we have, or when we have it, or when we close it, keeping to the 15 fish bag limit and a 13-inch minimum size, I think ought to be the standard. And if the other states agree to May 1st opening at 13 inches, 15 fish, I think that's fine. A lot depends on how our February season went. I don't know how if Delaware had a season, you're gonna talk to that, I'm sure, but how that will affect what we're doing and having to do any mid-season closure, to pay back February. I'm not sure how that all fits together in the whole scheme of things, but I don't favor, changing the size limit within a year or within a season. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you, Will. Was everyone ever able to hear that?
Not very well.
But to be clear, the Maryland, Delaware, et cetera, they are going with a May 1st, December 31st, 12.5 inch limit.
Yes.
So if we wanted to be consistent from state to state, then that would be it would be easy for enforcement in federal waters and such.
I would have to go do homework and ask some of the charter guys. But
No time.
it seems like they're not, when we discussed this last year, there were a number of charter boat guys that weighed in.
So last year, do you mean the February season?
We had black sea bass discussions
Okay,
last year, and a number of the charter boat guys weighed in.
yeah, that would have been for the February season, which is very popular with the charter industry.
So I'm just afraid that if we, just for my part, even though I'm a commercial rep, I know some of the charter guys, and I've always asked them. But it really falls under the recreational guys, represent the charter guys, too.
Alexa, on these trips, how many of these charter captains or just regular recreational anglers are actually catching their 15 fish bag limit? Just because, the reason I asked is just because a half an inch. I've gone a couple times, you know, not a whole lot, not as many as some of these guys up here, but from what I recall is a lot of these guys are catching their 15 fish bag limit, and it's, and coming back early too in the day. So I'm just wondering, if a half an inch is, and gives us another month in the season, you know, is worth it, that's all.
So I don't know, but I know the last time, which would have been, I wanna say 2022, that we looked at changing the bag limit. It got us very little bang for our buck in making reductions,
Oh,
which
so they're
which
not,
I would
okay.
take to mean
That they're
not many are achieving the bag limit. But, you know, the charter versus private, sectors, can sometimes differ in, what like the average bag limit is they're getting.
Right,
And
right,
the,
okay.
the charter industry is, I think, a smaller portion of Virginia's regular season harvest.
Okay, so to them, you know, a 13-inch fish, that's a pretty big fish, you know, if they're not catching their bag limit.
Anything else? I did want to say to staff, for next year, if we proceed with February, I don't know how many of y'all realize that this happened this year. Several head boats from Ocean City came and ran out of Chincoteague and participated in our open February season, which is all fine and good, but they come to Virginia and reap the benefits of the season, but then they go back to Ocean City and Virginia is stuck paying back their fish. So I think somehow we need to make it a Virginia-only season somehow, to where you have to fish out of Virginia 90% of the time, or somehow we need to come up with something to keep these out-of-state boats from coming here and then going back, and then we're stuck paying their fish back.
We We are getting into the February season after this.
Okay.
So we can maybe have a little more of those discussions. then.
Okay, perfect.
Did the committee want to make a motion to support one option or another, or do we just want to take the individual opinions?
I'd make a motion to support option one, just for consistency purposes.
Just one moment. Will Bransom has a comment.
Yeah, Alexa, and this is for the committee, that, you know, if the combined, southern region of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina decide they want option one here, that's not to say that Virginia did not set a minimum of 13 inches, even though the other states have 12 and a half. That's a more conservative measure than the other states, but that's, you know, we don't, I guess what I'm saying is we don't have to go with 12 and a half inch minimum. We can say 13, that's just more conservative, and it meets the criteria that the federal agencies have set. And it's interesting, I want to hear this discussion. I think, Skip, if it was you, brought it up about out-of-state registered vessels. We talked about the February season. I definitely want to hear about that. So that's all I have, Alexa. Thank you. Going back to you.
Thank you, Will.
Tom?
So let me throw a monkey wrench out here. So the February season, we always close in the middle of the summer. If we did a 13-inch bag, or if we did a April 1st to December 31st, could we close April 1st to May 1st as the February payback?
Not this year.
Well, I mean, next year.
It's,
It's just a
I
concept.
don't see why it wouldn't be possible. That doesn't say it certainly is possible.
Yeah. But I don't know that we have statistics for April so that you can justify it.
Yeah, if we wouldn't be open for April this year, I don't know that we could get that passed, because we have to request our conservation equivalency proposal to National Marine Fisheries Service.
Be an interesting concept.
So Alex, did you want to make a
Yeah,
motion?
Tom, I think it was Tom Powers. That's a real good idea, but I think what Chief Kenyon and Alexa are gonna be hamstrung with is that we would only have this year's data, 30 days of data to show, and I don't think that'd be enough for the federal agencies to accept for us to take that as a credit next year, to offer up as a offset for a February season in 2027. What I'm thinking is that they won't have, I don't think we have enough data or enough validity of the data to.
Alex, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a motion to support option one, season May 1st through December 31st, 12.5-inch minimum size limit with a 15 fish bag limit.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? So I guess we'll vote. Everybody in favor?
Can you repeat the?
Yeah, option one.
Option one.
Okay.
Everybody in favor?
Can you hand up so I can count? All right, we have 6 hands raised in the room and online.
Vice Chairman Fox.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Yes, this is Arnie, and I say yes, I'm in favor.
Will is in favor.
I don't see it.
And then everybody
Okay,
not in
that's
favor?
8-4.
Everybody not in favor?
Not in favor.
So
Okay,
that carries.
all right. Thank you.
So we'll go with option one.
All right, so for the February black sea bass season, I'm coming to you a little earlier than I usually do because February black sea bass reports aren't due until March 15th. Unfortunately, that's just the way the timing for this meeting worked out. So we're currently at a 54% of permittees have reported yet. So this is our history of February black sea bass harvest in Virginia. For 2026, the solid bar is about 27,000 pounds. Based on trips that have been called into our operation stations that hailed out and hail in, I'm estimating we'll probably wind up around 33,000 pounds. Again, this is very preliminary. I just sent out a reminder email today, and then I usually call up some people who I know took trips to remind them if we still haven't gotten anything. So this is February by the year. For 2026, we had 284 permits. Currently, 88 trips have been reported through the Saltwater Journal. The number in parentheses is that we had 119 trips called into operations. So, we know there's about at least 30 trips that haven't been reported yet. Those 88 trips have reported 11,965 black sea bass landed. That's number of black sea bass. Based on an average weight of fish landed as sampled by our MRIP staff, that puts us just below 27,000 pounds. And like I said, we're at a 54% reporting rate. So for the February black sea bass season, we are required, in order to have this fishery, we have to pay back any black sea bass landed in February. So we typically do that by calculating a daily harvest rate from MRIP. So the total pounds landed in a 2-month wave divided by the number of days open. And so in this table here, you have those 2-month periods and what the daily harvest rate is. You can see the differences. So May and June, very similar to July and August. September and October, much higher daily harvest rate. And then November, December, very little. So if we assume 33,000 pounds, which again, incomplete reporting, this is just my estimate, that would be the number of days needed to close in each wave. So May through August, if we closed somewhere in there, that would be about 10 days. September to October would be about 5 days. And November and December, we would have to close into October. So I wouldn't suggest taking off the end of the season, as we would lose many more days as the other, but that's up for the committee. I'm looking for any recommendations on when you think we might want to take that closure. The past few years, we have added it onto that July 16th to July 26th mid-season closure. Before that, we typically close June 1st, as that's when a lot more of our fisheries were opening up. But any time within this period is open for the committee to suggest.
I would suggest trying to do it as early as possible to get it out of the way, since there's no mid-season other closure. But does anybody else have thoughts?
And is that what's been done in the past, right there?
It's always been tacked onto that mid-season closure, which we don't have this year because of the liberalization.
Before, when it was just a May 15th through December 31st season, it closed generally June 1st through however many days were needed.
See, 2 years ago, we had a big discussion with a few charter boat guys, Rudy Inlet guys, the head boats.
Yep.
And whatever decision was made then would make sense to keep that up. So,
So I would say mid-June.
is that what,
I mean, I'm looking at it thinking from a tourist standpoint, school lets out June 7th or something. You wanna do it before the tourists show up with all their kids.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we
Do it
do
as
what
early.
Tom said.
Yeah, do it somewhere before June 5th, or, so like the last 10 days of May, maybe? Skip, you're a charter guy.
Yeah, I mean, either,
You've got other things you can fish on then.
right.
Striped
Maybe-
bass are in season then.
I kinda agree with Skip, maybe the first beginning of May, so you can actually have a consistent season, right? Starting May 10th all the way through the end of the year, rather than break it up. We've always had to pay back the February landings, and now we don't have to, so you can have a consistent fishery and be able to plan around that, rather than not knowing exactly when those days are gonna be taken. You know it's gonna be taken in the beginning of May. So I kinda agree with Skip.
So you're saying take it off the beginning of the season because the other motion was May 1st?
I would have to agree with that from a consistency point of view.
Yeah.
It just would make it easier for everybody.
Do we need a motion on that? or
Appears to
you
me it
wanna
would be
just do
easier for
first 10
everybody to
days
just
of
take it
May?
May 1st through the 10th and be done with it.
You're recommending, beginning May 1st?
Mm-hmm.
Be done with it.
And then it doesn't get wrapped up in.
Then you don't have
all
it
day.
open and close, open and close.
All right, Will has a comment?
Yeah, something to remember is that, I know that, National Marine Fisheries encourage the federal fishery managers to align blue line tile season, which usually starts May 1st. They moved it to May 15th because sea bass open May 15th. So discussing this in early May, before blue line tile season opens up, is probably a wise idea to keep the closure before blue line tile season opens. That way, we're not going back to what we used to have, where blue line tile is open, black sea bass is closed. You know, nobody's gonna run out for blue line, for golden tile only, and, maybe black sea bass, fine, but, you know, keep black, if we're gonna close 5 days, or 10 days, I'm sorry, do it in early May is my suggestion, before blue line tile season opens. That way, when tile season's open, you might catch black sea bass anytime you're catching blue line tile. I hate to waste that resource.
Okay, thank you.
Agree, and that's where the 1st through the 10th would work perfect.
Okay. Yeah, do we wanna make that a motion, or?
Okay, May 1st through the 10th?
Is that a motion?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, that's 9 in person and on virtual.
I'm for it.
Yes.
Okay,
Ernie votes yes.
all right, thank you, Ernie. So that's 11-4, 11 FOR. And just a reminder, the 33,000 pounds is an estimate based on incomplete reporting, so it may not necessarily be 10 days.
It might be 8 or 9, or it could be 11.
Yeah, it could be somewhere around there.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's unlikely to come back and be much more than that.
All right,
Makes it even more beneficial to have it in the beginning.
exactly, yep, yep. All right, is that it on the sea bass? Oh,
Yep.
so remember, y'all need to get to work to figure out something about Virginia only, because I actually talked to Mike Luisi, who is the Maryland guy, and I told him, I said, you know, if this is gonna happen, because he said none of his guys wanted it open, is why Maryland didn't participate, because it's open for everybody to participate, for every state. They just have to participate. And he said they might have to look into that. So if Maryland opens it, then that's fine, you know, they'll have their own. But I still think Virginia needs to come up with something, and I've talked to Joe about this, something that excludes out-of-state boats from coming here and getting a permit. Whether it's, you know, your hailing port has to be a Virginia hailing port in order to get a permit, something. I don't know what it'll look like, but that's for y'all.
We have one hand in the room, then we'll go to Will.
All right.
On that note, does staff, or do we have a record of those vessels, put in for a permit and got a permit? Do y'all know?
Yes,
So you know they did, those two head boats?
yes,
And they did put in for the permit?
yes,
And they reported?
yes.
Okay. So we know what they caught, hopefully, if they were honest.
Everything's really preliminary right now, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but if it's only 2 boats, they can't tell us.
Well, there's,
It's 4 that I know
4,
of.
okay, you
yeah,
can tell us.
I haven't,
Yeah, you should
I
know.
haven't
And it
worked
might
out
be more
which
than that.
which exactly boats these are, but, we
You
know,
can't tell us
we
if
know
it's only
what
3.
boats were permitted from people whose place of residence is in Maryland.
Yeah.
So they don't, the permit doesn't say anything about the registration of the vessel? It just says the person who owns it or whoever, it's issued to an individual and has their address on it, but it doesn't,
Yes,
it's not registered, it's not issued to a boat.
correct. It's the captain or operator of the vessel has to have the permit. But we have the vessel names through our call-in system.
Okay. Well, one thing to think about, is Captain Skip asked nicely to staff to think about a few things. One thing would be to actually require as well the vessel name and the hailing port in future, just so we can track that data. That way, you don't have, the more details, the better,
Yeah.
especially for
We-
out
we-
of state.
We have most of it because with the recreational black sea bass season, you're required to call our operations station the morning of. You give your name, your vessel name, where you're fishing out of, a vessel description, for a few reasons, including that when our MRIP staff is looking for fish to sample, they'll say, I know this boat is out of this port, they're coming in around 3 o'clock, we'll go meet them and get some samples. So we have those daily call-ins, so we generally have a captain's name associated with a vessel name.
Well, it's a rare occasion that we have this much ability to track, because I can tell you it's happening a lot bigger with a lot of smaller vessels out of Maryland. I mean, and commercial vessels, tapping into Virginia snowy grouper, tilefish, I mean, the whole gamut, especially at the state line offshore area.
Well, and that's why we refer to this as a special season, because there's no MRIP sampling, because it's outside of the ASMFC, determined seasons. We have to provide a lot more data, keep a lot of tracking. And, they, at their last big review of the February season, they said, Virginia, everything seems to be working great, this is a good model. Virginia and North Carolina are the only states to have participated so far. And North Carolina hasn't since, I wanna say, 2020. So for the last several years, we've been the only state doing it. And because it is a lot, for the state, for the, anglers, but, Virginia has found it worth it.
Anything else on the sea bass?
Alexa,
I think we had, Will, had you had a comment?
Yes, I have two comments. One observation, the reporting percentage at 54% stinks. And I gotta tell you that, having sitting at that big table, if we consistently have 54%, we probably won't go with a future special season in February. The percentage, we've been a model
Oh,
of
give me
just
80%.
using this data and our reporting and our methods of collection, by other states have seen it and say, yeah, that Virginia's got it together, but at 54%, that's not on staff, that's on anglers, that stinks. Now, my second point is about the special season and restricting out of state or non-Virginia vessels. This is a special season, and somebody else got a comment to make? Get some feedback or something. The special season permit, with that, could probably be some special conditions, like restricting it for hire vessels with Virginia registration, or something like that. I would recommend the staff get a hold of council and find out what conditions can we put on this special season permit. We don't do it we've done it most years, but get with council and find out what participating. I don't think you can restrict the not-for-hire vessels, but maybe, I don't know. Over to you.
So I can respond to the reporting rate that generally, and I should have that table up on the screen. Generally, we're at an 80% reporting rate. The 54 is we're
So far this
5
year.
days before the end of reporting. I have only just today sent out an email saying we have not yet gotten your report. And for the next few days, I'll probably be calling everyone who hailed in and has not yet reported. So that number will increase over the next few days. Should increase significantly before we get to commission.
I don't mean to cast shade on the staff. You guys do a fabulous job today. It's just, if there's a responsibility on the anglers who get this permit to do their required reporting. And if they don't, well, then some sanctions should be put on them. The work you do, I mean, you called me, I didn't get a permit, you called me down on it. You know, why didn't you get your permit? But, and so the staff does a great job with this, but, you know, and I know we have a few more days left, but still, that's, you know, that pales compares to what we had in previous years, I think. So, but thanks for the great work the staff does.
Thank you. And Ernie, I think you had a comment?
Yes, I do. I have no problem with what the suggestion about the instate boats, but it'll never fly. You need to run it by your attorney general, it's a commission with you all, because we had to sell commercial licenses to out-of-state individuals, because the federal judge found in their favor. The state of Virginia was sued back in the 90s, and we lost, and anything that can migrate out of the state, we had to sell a license for. And, you know, I think it's gonna fall in the same category, if not even worse, because the fish are caught in the EEZ. As much as I like to protect the Virginia fishermen, I don't know how we could. You really need to run it by your attorney general's office, see what they have to say.
Thank you, Ernie.
And I agree with Ernie on that, other than, the only issue is we have to pay their fish back. You know, if there was some way we could tally what their fish were and then Maryland pays them back, that would be absolutely great too. Then they could still come do it. But I don't see that happening. But that's the only issue, is us having to pay their fish back, and there's no, you know, it's like a get out of jail card free for them.
We might have trouble requiring the same of Tennessee and Alabama and Pennsylvania and the other states that have permittees come out for it.
Yeah.
Anything else on black sea bass? All right, thank you.
All right, the speckled trout.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Let's see, for those of you who I have not met, I've met most everybody at this point. My name's Ethan Simpson. I am the head of the research and survey units here at VMRC. And I've been asked to give a presentation and an update on the most recent cold stun event that we experienced here in 2026. A few notes I want to make before we get started. I'm not here to solicit necessarily an action from the committee. This is a discussion point. This is something to keep you all informed. As of right now, the plan is to take whatever we discuss here to commission in March, if you know, to see if any further action is deemed or what the pleasure of the commission. But with that, we'll get into this a little bit. So, what is a cold stun? Just to get it out there, what we're actually talking about. What you see is speckled trout and other finfish that overwinter in estuarine environments. They are susceptible to these cold stun events. Normally, this is caused when water temperatures fall below a fish's thermal minimum. And in instances where that suboptimal water temperatures persist, you do see mortality. There's two ways this can happen. One is quicker. The ice and snow melt cause a rapid drop in temperature in shallow waters. That tends to happen at the front end of the season. or what we experienced this year is the prolonged exposure to below average air temperature. So we had a week and a half, nearly 2 weeks of very cold weather, and that's ultimately what caused the mortality event we saw this year. These events can range from just a few fish in a few areas to many thousands of fish across states. So keep that in mind as we move forward. In front of you is a map of our confirmed locations where we had either VMRC staff or DWR staff or other confirmed individuals witnessed cold sun events. This isn't comprehensive. I'm sure there were more in other locations. These are just the ones I confirmed. As far as a timeline goes, so we began observing stunned fish on the 3rd of February. Some of our MRIP staff doing black sea bass sampling witnessed a number of fish at the southern areas, boat ramps. After that, they continued to come in. Virginia DWR called us a few times. We got some calls from some VIM staff, all out doing their normal surveying, who encountered some cold stunned animals. So we began observing high volumes of fish at multiple locations, mostly around Rudy Inlet and Little Creek. DWR staff observed more in the Mobjack region, particularly like the Ware and the North River. We have reports from commercial watermen in the same area. And then on the 8th of February, received a letter from Visa citing social media posts and other public observations of cold stunned fish. And that was enough to elicit a response from the agency. We did bring it in front of the February commission, again as a discussion point, and then that brought us to here. Of note as well, just referencing commercial landings, prior to the cold stun events, about 40,000 pounds of our 51,000 pound quota had been caught. Following the cold stun events, staff did keep up with local buyers, and they were able to confirm that a number of these cold stun fish were being sold commercially, and that prompted a closure of the commercial fishery on the 12th of February. So, historically, periodic cold stun events have been a recurring phenomenon in Virginia's waters. Most recently, the most notable ones that we have on record are 2014 and 15. There was one that bridged from 2017 into 2018, and then last year in 2025. What you see in front of you is just a summary of what our response has been to those various events. The major response we had was in 2014, and I have a slide later if we're interested that goes into how that timeline of that 2014 response. But basically in 2014, at the request of the public and FMAC, we instituted several regulatory responses, including a closure of the recreational fishery that went all the way to the end of July. That was also when we implemented our 5-fish bag limit with 1 fish greater than 24 inches. We created the bycatch only commercial fishery at 80% of the quota, and then a weekly buyer reporting requirement during peak months of harvest. 2015, it did come in front of FMAC, but with the 2014 response, both FMAC and the commission agreed no further action was going to be necessary. Same thing happened 2017-18, came in front of FMAC. They did not recommend moving forward with any sort of closure or regulatory response. Last year, it did not come in front of FMAC or the commission. So a lot of people bring up that North Carolina closes, and they have a system in place that allows them to close down their recreational fishery as they deem necessary. So an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about the management response in North Carolina is that what they have is a guidance document. It's not in code, it's not something that is automatically triggered. Any closure they set out is at the discretion of their director. They use an adaptive approach, and they take into a couple considerations. They consider the size and scope of the kill. So size is number of fish, scope is how far across the state it reaches. And they also take in temperature exposure. So there's been some scientific work done showing that these fish can survive at specific temperatures. The threshold seems to be 37.8 degrees Fahrenheit for 24 hours is enough to cause mortality in 90% of fish, or 41 degrees for 8 consecutive days, this is water temperature, is enough to start causing mortality as well. So when North Carolina triggers these closures because of this, generally what they're doing is they're getting public reports in, their staff are observing kills, and they either go check their, because they have a array of 80 individual temperature loggers across the state, and that's what that map is. It doesn't provide real-time data, but they are able to go out and download that data when they observe a kill, and that tells them exactly how cold it's been, and they can make this call. However, in 2026, this year, they did make that closure without downloading that data. There was enough public input, and it seemed, on the back of the 2025 event, they went ahead and closed it and then confirmed after the fact that, yes, it was in fact cold enough. That's different from 2025, where they waited until they downloaded that temperature data, then closed it. So that's generally how they respond to these types of events. The implications of a cold stun. So this is where it gets complicated. There's very difficult to actually estimate this mortality. So there's been a couple efforts to, after the fact, determine how many fish died. They've looked at tagging models, as in animals that had been tagged before, how many survived, how many washed up in their system. They've looked at harvest comparisons from previous years. They have various juvenile indices they use to see if recruitment is infected by these events. And what's kind of coming out of it is a very unclear pattern. So the graph in front of you, what the figure in front of you shows, is their spawning stock biomass through time. This is from the most recent assessment that ended in 2022. And you can see there was a period of low abundance in the 90s through the early 2000s, and then abundance increased. Every red circle you see on this figure is a confirmed cold stun event. Looking at it, nothing really concrete appears. You see those 4 in a row from, well, 4 out of 6 years, from 99 to 2004, experienced these mortality events. And then the population went up quite a bit. Same thing happened 09, 10, and 11. You saw these cold stun events, and then the population still crept up. Went down again the following year, but what it creates is a very messy signal. The most recent stock assessment was able to incorporate this wintertime mortality. So they were, for the first time, the previous 2 stock assessments didn't include it, but this most recent one created a time variable natural mortality where they assume natural mortality increases in the winter because of these cold stun events. And what they were able to show is that without telling the model that these occurred, the model was able to predict when they happened in the past. So with the stock designation of not overfished, but overfishing is occurring, that does account for these cold stun events. To further complicate that, you can also look at landings. So these landings are specific to Virginia. With the 4 years I noted earlier, those are the years that we have confirmed cold stuns in Virginia. And again, the signal's kind of messy. You look at 2014 and 2015, both cold stun event years, both suboptimal harvest. 2016, harvest improved. 2017, cold stun event. 2018, fishing was bad. Followed by the best fishing we've seen in 20 years. Last year, the cold stun event in 25, and 2025, fishing wasn't great. So all that really to say is the cold stuns happen. It's a complex process, and we don't really have from staff's point of view, we don't really have a recommendation of how to approach them at this time. So that is why we brought it in front of you all. Open to discuss it, see if you have any questions for us or something we're not thinking of. I'm happy to hear it. But otherwise, any questions?
Question.
Well, I think it's good that you can sell the fish commercially when they float up to the top and they're not wasted.
Sure. And that is why we allowed them to do that. As long as they have to get a commercial dip net license. With that dip net license, they're able to capitalize on those stun fish.
And to remind recreational fishermen, you're not allowed to use a dip net to catch a fish that's got a commercial quota, which includes speckled trout.
Correct. That only applies to commercial anglers.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
I've always wanted to trade bluefish for red drum on the gill nets, recreational gill nets, because they're dead when they're in a gill net, the bluefish are. You did misspeak a little bit This was discussed in FMAC last year.
Oh, I apologize.
I brought it up.
Okay.
I believe it was a February meeting, and Pat pointed out to me that North Carolina closed the fishery, I believe, after 8 days at 41 degrees, you said. That's probably what he said. And then he said, and we had 42 days below that year
Right.
at York River. But nothing was done. I wrote a letter to you, or to Adam, I guess, and Alexa, on February 2nd, asking about this because I was concerned that it was gonna happen again. And the other thing is that when we had one of these cold stuns where we actually had the closure, I believe, we had a diver, there was a diver, commercial diver that was in the Elizabeth River, and he commented, came back up and said, the whole bottom is just coated with dead speckled trout. And that's when we had the hot ditch still there, so that kind of attracted them there. I think that if you're going to look into this, you need to think about cold stuns in two ways. Number one is an episodic cold stun. You had cold weather, the water went down for 4 days, a week maybe, and especially in local areas, you had a problem. And then you had winters like we had this year where we had, the Coastal River froze over for a week and a half. So that means that the water was cold there and longer periods than that, and we had basically really cold weather for kind of a month. And that, I think, is more of a sustained exposure problem, and I worry more that is what we need to be trying to address. I worry that if we can do something like we did back, I guess it was 2014, where we shut the fishery down to harvest through July and get the fish that survive the ability to spawn once, that will help them recover faster. And I think that's what happened the year before we had the really big harvest, was we shut it down so they could respond and so they could recover and so on. And I'm disappointed that staff is not taking something to the commission, at least for them to consider in March. Otherwise, we'll be May before we start to do anything about this.
It is going in front of the commission in March.
Right, but is it going in front of the commission in March to close it? Or is it going to the commission in March to say, is staff gonna go, or I would suggest or hope that staff can go before the commission in March with a request to do something? Not just go before the commission, have them send it back to FMAC, and then us come back to you, and then you go back to the commission in April.
Yeah, that would be at the discretion of this committee. If they have a suggestion that they would like us to take in front of the commission.
I would like to see something go before the commission with public input to it and everything, so the public can get in on it, because it's not and it happened when we did this, and I wanna say it's 2014, just from
Yeah,
your
that
slide.
was the only time we've closed to do one of these.
There was any number of people, I was one of the people then who was requesting this and encouraging it to happen, as were a lot of hardcore speckled trout fishermen, which I'm not as hardcore as a lot of people about it. Because we wanted to not have an episodic up and down in the fishery. We wanted to have a more level fishery where the fish had a chance to repopulate, so we could continue to, have good populations.
Sure.
And I would hope that we can do something this year.
My only note is, according to spawning stock biomass, there's no correlation between spawning stock biomass and cold stuns.
But-
Even, so that chart you showed, 6 out of the last 11 years, 6 cold stuns out of the last 11 years through 22, and spawning stock biomass is at some of the highest levels there is. So if we want to be proactive about it and do it, that's fine, but this isn't the first cold stun, it won't be the last. And it's just unfortunate that, we can't better utilize those cold stun fish, but, I'm just going off what the data say. I mean, there's no correlation there.
It's hard to make a recommendation on what to do when we don't know how big this problem really is. We know it exists, but don't know how big it really is.
And
I mean,
that's the big issue, right? It's
if there
nearly
were some
impossible to
numbers,
estimate.
it'd be easy to say, you should have the power to temporarily close the season for X number of days based on, certain factors associated with the size of the kill.
But the problem becomes estimating the size of the kill. As Mr. Powers was saying, most of the fish are on the bottom. It makes it very difficult to count them. You could go out every day of the week. You could go out every 5 hours and count 100 fish. You don't know if it's the same 100 fish. You don't know if it's a completely different 100 fish. So that's the struggle. I will say one of the metrics North Carolina uses is.
You're asking us for, what we think you ought to do. The first thing we ought to do is identify the size of the problem.
Right. I was gonna say.
So somehow you've got to get into that. How big is this problem really?
And that would be something we'd also be interested in, if you have suggestions for guidelines, things that, some criteria we could look at. For example, North Carolina constitutes a fish kill event as 25 fish. So that's something that I've begun doing this year as I've been collecting this information, is every time somebody calls saying, I see dead fish, is it 25? So even just having a floor could help us moving forward for consistency's sake. But yes, point estimates of mortality is difficult.
But we know, one of the things that in the long run that may be useful is to see computers and Bluetooth and stuff like that works really well. Why don't we have better, or can the commission, go to RFAB and ask for money to set up a monitoring system for temperature?
I will say, we are actively.
Other than at the end of the ammo period
Right.
in Yorktown, because that's in the middle of the river.
Yeah, it's something that we are actively trying to look into, whether that's the CBIBS buoys or whether it's another source of temperature data, trying to find something that we can quickly get to. And that ultimately is the problem, is because it's interjurisdictional, there's different agencies. Getting that information quickly is where we would have to build that framework. We are also actively building a hotline that would be available online. Any individual would be able to essentially call in with where they saw them, how many they saw, able to upload pictures. We're actively developing those things. It's just in response to this year's, so it wouldn't be.
And so back again to my episodic or sustained. I think any metric that we use for trying to say there's a problem needs to be days below temperature, a given temperature, or sustained for days and weeks or whatever. If it's you had a bad week, oh well. If we had a bad January 15th through March 1st, which is kind of what we had this year.
Right.
That's pretty serious.
Don't the majority of the small speckled trout stay in the ocean and go down south far enough not to have a cold stunt, so it really doesn't matter?
They either go out or they go into deeper water and do better.
They don't die.
I won't say none of them die. I will say we collected about 100 fish this year for biological sampling, and not one of them was below 16 inches.
That's what I say. So
So,
you'll have your fish next year.
It does seem to predominantly affect the largest fish. I will say a fish, and I have a figure on, the age length curve, based on, that's the wrong one. Age length curve, that's how old a fish is at length. I know that's small, I apologize, but basically it boils down to a 1-year-old fish is reproductive. A 1-year-old fish is a little over 400 millimeters, which is 15.5 inches, give or take. So a 1-year-old fish, they grow rapidly. A 1-year-old fish is 15.5 inches. They seem to be the ones that survive these events. Any further questions, any further discussion?
How many people fish for them in the spring of the year? It's just predominantly a fall fishery.
It's slower. It is slower. It is not non-zero. I did do this math for commission, but I don't have it on the slide in front of me. It was based on MRIP's landing, as I believe if we closed for the period that we're discussing, it would have been about 11% reduction in overall harvest in a year. If that gets at your question.
And when you're looking at that, you gotta consider how many people fish catch and release in the spring.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're gonna just shift a lot of effort
later.
Catch and release, no, to catch and release in the
No.
spring.
Pretty much a catch and release fishery.
A lot of people do fish catch and release on
Anyway.
this thing. I mean, if I catch 6 fish, I'm gonna keep 2.
Anything else? I guess we're on to striped bass.
Well, I mean, do we wanna make a motion to have staff go to the commission and seek some kind of, not a closure to fishing forward, which, by the way, you need to change the word in regulations.
This is already been publicly advertised in a newspaper to go in front of the commission at March 31st. If this committee has any recommendations to provide to the commission, now would be the opportunity to provide a solidified recommendation coming out of this committee, whether you believe it should stay open with no closure, a limited closure, whatever this committee thinks is the most appropriate. We can ferry and provide that information to the commission so they can make an informed decision based on information from public comment as well as from this advisory committee. So now would be the time, if you'd like to make a motion, great. If not, that's fine too.
Would, if there's an emergency closure for a fish kill, would waiving the dip net requirement for commercial harvest
So
make a
this would
difference?
not be an emergency closure, it would be publicly advertised and go through a normal regulatory process.
Okay,
So it would be a closure effective May 1st.
No, it would be a closure effective, and it's a March 31st meeting, we can make it effective as soon as
Okay.
April 1st.
Okay.
I mean, have you had a lot of public comment about this or anything?
We've had 8 comments in favor of a recreational closure. I've had 1 comment in favor of a recreational closure, but specifically not asking to close the commercial incidental catch. And I've had 1 comment that would not favor either closures.
Right.
So you had 1 comment that said close both.
Yeah,
February 2nd.
Oh, yes, there we go. 1 comment that said both.
so so when fish are floating up and you called a number of the buyers who gave you a count of how many fish that they had bought, and those were bought from commercial watermen, would it make a difference would there be more brought in that had floated to the surface and died if the dip net requirement was waived?
At that point, you're still up against the quota. It was closed because we were reaching that maximum quota. So regardless of gear type, we
I'll
would have hit that
rephrase it.
wall.
Would less fish go to waste?
In theory, I mean, it would be a matter of again, you'd have to do away not just with the dip net requirement, but the quota to allow more to be caught.
I don't think the dip net license is included.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah.
Doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Yes, sir.
So what is the quota now? That would commercial catch?
51,000 is the max.
I know what the max is, but
Before
did
it
we
goes to
exceed it?
bycatch.
I think
Did we exceed the 51,400 pounds?
I don't believe the reports are due yet. Yeah, TBD. We predicted it would get there, but we have to wait till reports to come out.
But it didn't get there on October 15th.
No, it was at a little over 40,000 in.
Which to
beginning
me
of February.
says the population is down, whether people.
Not
No.
necessarily. That's
No.
You can't.
Now I'll speak up.
No,
No.
you just,
We had the worst weather in September. We had the highest tides we've ever seen. The hull seines were not effective. There was a lot of gear that wasn't effective. I'm not gonna sit idly by on that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
there was there was.
plenty of
other
fish.
reasons.
My only comment would be is to consider indices of like recruitment. I don't know, since the majority of the spawning stock bass biomass are the ones impacted by this, if there's strong recruitment, then that would further suggest that we have a good year class or 2 coming through that can help us rebound. However, if you have low years of recruitment and then you have cold stuns, especially multiple, then you would certainly want to protect the spawning stock biomass.
Yeah, and we've looked for indices within Virginia to see if we could find one. There's not a Virginia-specific indices that seems to capture recruitment of speckled trout. So we are reliant on what North Carolina provides in their indices. And they have also not seen a correlation between, just like biomass, they have not seen a recruitment relationship with these events either.
Why do the fish that are scooped up and sold during the fish kill have to count against the commercial quota?
Cuts commercial landings. As simple as that. If you pull it in as commercial landings, it goes against the commercial quota.
You're not picking up the dead half-eaten fish off the shore either.
Yeah, we sampled, a lot of these were in good shape when they came out of the water, so.
They were in good shape, but dead, or
Well,
in
yeah,
good shape
dead-
but
dead.
stunned?
The ones by the time I got to them, they were all dead. But they were definitely, food quality.
I'm back to, it's really hard to make a recommendation when we don't know what the problem really is. And maybe the first thing you need to do is define what you think the problem's gonna be, even if that's to mirror the criteria that North Carolina uses.
Sure.
Since they have the data.
So,
I mean, I believe you should have the power to temporarily close the season in the event of a cold snap. We can see it, the public sees it, but yet we can't define it, other than, hey, the temperature was this.
So one obvious recommendation to me would be have the ability to monitor the water temperature much more accurately and timely, like North Carolina does.
Be nice.
Better predictions.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
It goes right to the heart of what I'm saying.
Agreed.
I can find neighbors who have piers who will gladly put a thermometer over to the side and have it hooked into their wireless network.
We will continue to look into it. That is something that we're very conscious of. There are temperature buoys. It's just a matter of getting them in a timely
Not a
date.
motion, maybe the motion is to have staff start to define what the problem is, or what is necessary, the data necessary to define the problem.
We will continue to look at that. I think some of the more useful things is for the commission meeting coming up, whether or not this committee has a recommendation to close the recreational season, to leave it open, or if they have no recommendations whatsoever as far as opening, or, because that's what we've received as staff. is-
So
is
you're
there is
you're
there-
seeking a motion, I will make a motion to close the recreational fishery from April 1st.
Yeah, one second. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I was there in the great debate of 14 and 15.
I
about
can't hear
speckled
what
trout,
you're saying.
the Emotion behind it and the cold stun event. And also the following year, when the recreational community realized that we're going from 10 and 2 fish to 5 and 1 was not something that they had wanted, and went back to the commission to say, well, we'd like 7 and 2 fish, and they were shut down. They made that decision, the right decision, but it was all based on emotion and no science. It sounds like the committee is looking at doing that again. We don't have the science to define how bad the problem is. I caution about comparing our fishery and the water depth in the tributaries to North Carolina. They have a very different topography or bathymetric data than we do. And Ethan can perhaps talk to that, but they have a good system to monitor temperature over time in areas, maybe not real time, but they have a method, and I'd love to have us do the same. But I caution about making a decision. I don't keep speckled trout. I fish for them, but I don't keep them. But the slippery slope you get on by taking these decisions and saying, my gosh, I've seen a fish kill, I've heard this, and you go down and look, and there's 3 dead fish under a lady stocking, and that's a massive fish kill. And that's not exactly a massive fish kill. But how this slippery slope degrades down into the incidental catch restriction or elimination, or how it affects the commercial quota the following year. If they exceed the 51,000 this year with incidental catch, that's gonna reduce your quota next year. These are the kind of the waterfall events. If you make a decision like this, you can have effect on the commercial fishery. Recreational, I know a lot of people, I don't know many people that keep speckled trout. I don't. I know there's another member on the committee that doesn't. We love catching them, but they are one of the fastest growing fish in the ocean. As Ethan said, 15.5, 15.45, I think, in 1 year. They batch spawn all summer, starting in April all the way through August. They're very resilient fish. So I'd love for us to have some science to make a firm decision and say this is why. That's just my comments. little gun shy of going off and saying, let's close the fishery, let's impact the commercial incidental catch, let's, without having a little bit more science, because we've done this before. Okay, that's all I got, Ethan. Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you, Will. You had a motion?
Yeah, I was gonna move to close the recreational fishery from May 1st through July 1st to harvest, and not touch the commercial fishery because they're already at a bycatch of 50 pounds per person, 100 pounds per vessel.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Let me show of hands. 1, 2, 3.
Any online?
Any opposed?
I have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Ernie.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood. I guess Tom made a motion to close the commercial fishery. It's already closed.
He made a motion to close the recreational fishery,
Not the commercial.
not
The commercial fishery would stay as it is because it's already at a 50-pound bycatch per fisherman, 100 pounds per vessel.
So
I
that,
apologize for that.
no. So that was a motion to close the recreational fishery from May 1st through July 1st, which failed 3-7.
And can we add that there was a comment that it would protect fish in their first spawn?
And that's the key.
Understood. We will take that all in front of the commission. That was the intent.
Perhaps we should have another motion for you to define what constitutes a fish kill in terms of temperature, dead fish, and the effect on the spawning stock biomass.
Sure. At your pleasure.
To at least work in that direction.
Yeah, work in that direction, and when you're.
I'll do that. I'll put the motion forth that staff work on defining the metrics for what constitutes a fish kill in terms of
A broad area.
dead fish, temperature, and the effects on the spawning stock biomass.
Yeah, and the broadness of the area. For instance, a fish kill in Rudy Inlet, okay, fine.
Is there a second
If it's
on
in-
that?
But that would be part of
Second.
defining the metrics.
I'll second.
All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any online in favor?
What was the motion again?
So the motion was, the motion was to ask staff to define metrics on a fish kill, including dead fish, temperature, and effects on spawning stock biomass.
Correct.
Yeah, right, I will vote aye, yes.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Online.
I abstain from it.
Thank you.
This is a tough one.
Just some small discussion, you go ahead.
Absolutely.
Just a quick question. With the spawning starting in April, so there's a good chance between April and July of a couple of spawning events in between?
They batch spawn throughout the warmer weather, so it will be, as soon as the water temperature is conducive for it, you should start seeing spawning. So it is just depend on how quickly we warm up.
Okay, thank you.
I think that staff gets taxed with a lot of work. We ask them for a lot of work that it's unrealistic. I'm not gonna say this is unrealistic, but I will say that they have some great data already, especially the one that goes back to '05 with the red bullets and the stuns. And what it shows us is there really isn't, I would love to know why it exploded from 2005 till now. Nobody has that answer. And we're not gonna find an answer to the effects of the cold stun, other than when you look at 20 years of data, and it shows that it really doesn't have as a big effect. And we knew that when the busload of people showed up 20 years ago. And, I'm not trying to be negative or attack anyone or play it down, but some of these things take 20 years of data to see, and we have a trend that we can see. And to work the staff to death to find something that is a pie in the sky, I just feel like is a challenge that when they have so much other things to do. I think we have the data, they've shown it to us. What you know, what really doesn't happen after these cold stunts. I mean, we've had a spectacular fishery. North Carolina's had a spectacular fishery, and they fish all summer. It's not just a fall thing for them. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Appreciate staff. I just hate throwing more work on them when we have pretty good data right now.
Hey, the outcome may be that we don't need to do anything. That could be the outcome of it.
Thank you for the discussion, it was very helpful.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
All right, on to striped bass.
Good evening, everyone. All right, so tonight we're gonna have a discussion about the striped bass commercial temporary quota share cap. This was brought to staff's attention by one of the committee members. And we're just asking tonight to have a discussion, and we'd like some suggestions on how to address this cap if the committee feels it needs to be addressed. I know we have some members of the public also that would like to speak on this. So I'm gonna go through a little bit of history, and then we will have a discussion. So trying to figure out when this went into play, I went all the way back to when the commercial striped bass fishery was started and the quota was allocated. Back in 1997, in the regulation, the fishery was distributed equal shares to permitted fishermen, and this 2% was in the regulation back in 1997. And then in 2000, when the fishery switched over to a tag-based system, so at that point it was one fish, one tag, and the regulation continued to hold the 2%. We just changed the language. So no fisherman shall hold shares totaling more than 2% of the total annual striped bass harvest quota of tags. So the total tags that Virginia allocated, the fishermen could not hold more than 2% of the tags. And then in 2006, we switched the fishery over to a weight-based quota system, and the 2% carried over with that system as well, except that we just switched it to a fisherman cannot hold more than 2% of the total weight for the Virginia Bay quota. This, you'll see right here, is the actual language that is currently in regulation today. So just keep in mind when we're discussing this that tonight we are discussing the temporary bay cap, because the 2% is actually two caps separately. We have two caps for striped bass in the total fishery. We have a cap for the bay, which is 2%, and that's temporary and permanent. And we also have an 11% cap on the coastal area quota. Tonight, we're not planning on speaking about the coastal quota cap unless somebody else wants to discuss it. Okay, here's a chart, and I apologize that it is tiny. I just wanted to give everybody an example of what the bay cap looked like throughout the years, looking at 2010 through 2025. So you can see in 2010, 2% of the quota was 30,760 pounds, and then it drops, picks up again in 1 year for 2014 when we had a little rise in the quota, and then pretty much held steady at 21,299 pounds, and then dropped to 19.6, and then 2025 we had another reduction, we dropped to 18,291 pounds, and that's where we currently are today. So just a few current fisheries stats, and this is for last year, fishing year 2025. There were 337 Chesapeake Bay area permanent quota holders. There were 228 active bay fishermen, and this is including individuals that only hold temporary quota and don't hold any permanent quota. Out of those 228 active fishermen, there were 11 fishermen that capped out at the 2%. So to start our discussion, staff just went ahead and put a few possible options on here. First option always usually is status quo. We don't touch it, we leave it as is. Second one, we can increase the percentage. Or the third one would just be to do some sort of hard poundage cap. For example, just say 25,000 pounds would be the cap. You just have to keep in mind, if you do a hard poundage cap, that if the circumstance does arise where we get a quota increase, we're gonna be addressing this again, probably. I do have some backup slides if anybody has questions and more information is needed, but I would just like to open it up to the committee and when they're ready to take public comment.
Right, thanks, Jill. I think eliminating the cap or increasing the cap can make a big difference in that commercially, we only catch, give me the number, please, somewhere in the mid 80% of the total quota.
Yep, and I do have that on here as well.
So we basically give somewhere around 15% leaves uncaught every year. And that cap limit at 2% would help us catch the rest that we're leaving in the water.
Yep, so here is a chart from 2010 to 2025 of the percent bay quota harvested. You can see 2025, we caught 89% of the quota.
So I'm a vote for doing something, increasing that cap or eliminating it, that would help us catch the 11% that we leave uncaught.
Would the committee like to hear more support or more discussion? One other, so to add to Mike's statement, the average age of the watermen in Virginia is approaching 60.
60.
So we've got this, I hate to cliche, use this colorful term, but graying of the fleet. So you've got a lot of people that aren't able physically to catch their fish.
You're the poster child.
There you go. The guy at the end of the table might be, but, yeah, we're all getting old. But that's one bonus that would help, some of those people probably get their quota caught. The other bonus is, and this is sometimes hard for the recreational side to grasp, but not catching it doesn't look good to larger managers and federal eyes. They see it as a problem that we don't have the fish. We know we do. We're already doing what they want and catching smaller fish. That's another discussion. We're hamstrung with that. So we're doing the best we can with regulations that were adopted when they really didn't need to be under Northam. But that's another positive for doing this change, is that, catching more of the quota would indicate and show the actual health of the fishery.
There was discussion at one time, this is years ago, about people buying quota just to say, I don't want those fish caught.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, you're saying it's money we don't make, and I agree with that. But on the other hand, that's also fish that survive and are able to spawn and reproduce. And a recreational fishery and commercial fishery are looking for two different things. A commercial fishery is looking for maximum sustainable yield. How many of these fish can I take and how much money can we make and I don't care if there's not many left because they're sustainable. Whereas a recreational fishery, they're looking for hope and expectations. I go out fishing, I expect to catch some of the fish I'm targeting, and I hope to catch a trophy. They want a large population with a large age distribution and size distribution. It's a contrary thing. So to say that I think, catching 90%, 89%, which we did last year, I think that's a very good percentage for harvest. It's got margin in there for error because we know these numbers aren't perfect. The commercial harvest is as good a numbers as you're gonna get.
Right,
But-
so I'll try it a different way. When it was a tag-based system and you were only allowed to, you only get a certain number of tags and it was only a 2% cap on the tags. That's also before that's when we had a 9-inch mesh size and we could target larger fish. 2019, we went to the 7-inch mesh size, which made us target smaller fish. And the counter to yours is, it's made us harder catching what we catch.
Right, and so let's go.
We agreed,
yeah.
we agreed to go to a 7-inch mesh. Well, we didn't agree, but we went to a 7-inch mesh to protect spawning
Protect-
fish.
yeah, right.
So we already made a big this is too big of a word, a sacrifice. Just changing this 2%. And then the second counter is, it's difficult for staff to argue at the ASMFC when ASMFC can come back and says, well, you don't catch all your quota anyway.
But what is the statistics for commercial harvest coastwide on a state-by-state basis for the percentage of quota that the commercial fishery catches? That's the argument you have to make if you're using that, is the data you would need is, on average, there's only 2 states that get better than 90%. I don't know, but if that's the fact, or if we're the only state that gets these kind of statistics, and everybody else does a higher percentage catch, then that's where you can say that this is argument. I think that the argument that I'm not against is to say, if we increase it to 4% or 5%, that'll concentrate the harvest among a smaller number of fishermen who can become more efficient at it and make better money as individual commercial fishermen. I'm fine with that. But to say we want to do it because we want to get the catch numbers up on a percentage for the overall quota, I think that's an invalid argument.
So would you, instead of eliminating the cap, would you say 5%?
I think that it's a reasonable thing to say increase the percentage. And if you look up here, when we had a really good harvest, that's the wrong one. You got one with the pounds. You guys really need to do big fonts and white backgrounds.
So Chris and George, let's help negotiate with Mr. Powers here.
No. So look here, you had 30,000 pounds on your good years, 25 to 30,000 pounds. We had a much larger overall quota. So if you doubled the percentage now, or if you went up to 3%, you'd be back up into those kind of numbers with the quota we have now. And that's the kind of target I think we should look at. And you could also say it'd be pounds, but then you have to worry about, well, what happens if the quota goes down? And then how do you deal with that? But if you said a certain percentage of the quota and made it go up to 3%, then I think that would give you 30,000 pounds, and that would address it and put it back to where it was when we had a much higher.
If you
You only had 5%.
Or 4%, yeah.
Here's some examples.
You have, 5% of the license holders are getting up to the max. It's not that big, of a number in terms of the number of licenses,
Yeah.
so double it.
Yeah, I think it's not unreasonable to say double it or put another number on there, but not because we're not.
Can I make a motion to make it 4%?
Geez, I was gonna give you
If Tom actually agrees with that, I think we need to run with it.
You can.
I'll second the
I
motion.
want, just discussion more?
Yeah, is there public who want to talk about this?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to hear from them.
Will would also like to make a comment. Go ahead, Will.
If the commercial harvest was in the 90s, I would say, yeah, there could be perhaps discussion about a percentage increase. But the last time they hit 91%, if I remember, Jill's chart was 2015. If you're holding at 89% last year, I guess, why are we even entertaining additional increase in the percentage split or a weight split? I would rather propose that we make the tags available sooner in the year. I know they come out, Chief Kenyon and his staff issue the tags at a certain date in January, but I would like to see at least the committee, either at this meeting or a future meeting, talk about how can we issue a certain number of tags on the first business day after January 1st, and then once we have the percentage or the quota for the year, we can issue the remaining tags to the watermen at whatever split that they get for their individual quota. But to entertain a change in the commercial cap when you're only at 89%, so you give them 4%, now what are you gonna be now, at 75%, 80%? You know, I don't get it. If we're not harvesting the quota commercially, why are you talking about making a change?
It's not, they're not talking
Somebody
about,
explain it to me.
they're not talking about making a change to the amount of harvest globally, on average, that the waterman can catch, an individual waterman can catch. What they're saying is they want to be able to concentrate the fishery a little more to a smaller number of watermen.
So Will, actually, so what we're talking about here is the fishermen cannot hold more than 2% of the bay quota in their name. So it has nothing to do with the total amount of quota that's allocated to each fisherman. We allocate all of our allotted commercial quota to our fishermen. This is just how much
Okay, so
weight they can put in their name.
What I get then is that Mike's up there, I'll use Mike as example. Mike is authorized, allowed up to 2% of the quota, but not 3 or not 4%.
Correct.
Is that how I'm understanding it now?
That's correct, so.
Okay, yeah, then I
yep.
wouldn't have a problem with that. But if we're talking about splitting the percentage, you know, of total harvest,
No,
that I don't get.
no,
Maybe
we're
that
not
argument was
we
lost
are
on
not
me.
addressing that, no.
He still has to come up with the other 2% when he goes to 4%
Hey,
from
Mike,
somewhere.
my turn, okay? When you guys talk, those mics are very sensitive, and when you talk, it gets garbled, and you don't get it on this end, okay? But if we're talking about increasing the percentage of individual watermen, then I don't see a problem with that. But the other second part of my comment for Chief Kenyon and the staff is figure out a way to get a certain percentage of tags in the hands of the watermen right after New Year so that they can fish those first 2 weeks of January. That's all I got. Back over to you, Jill. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And I think we might address that other issue in other business after we address this issue tonight, later this evening. So are you guys ready to take public comment at this time, or?
So to be clear with something.
I think Ernie wanted to.
Go ahead, Ernie, sorry.
Hi, you know, I have no problem with increasing the quota, the cap for individuals. There are two ways you look at it, poundage or percentage. If you go with straight poundage and the quota will go down more, that would make it even a higher percentage. And if you go with the percentage and it goes up, so back above to where they were, so whatever it is, really needs to be temporary. And I guess the fishermen, these 11 fishermen realize that anybody they take on a boat that has quota does not count on their cap. It comes off that individual. As long as he is on the boat fishing, he's the one that reports. So, you know, that's a way around it, but, you know, some of this other stuff, you know, just like the gentleman talking about coming in January the 1st, I don't see how staff can do it. I mean, it would be fine with me. I don't fish till April the 1st, but, logistics, you know, a lot of people bring their tags back when they pick up their other tags and all kinds of stuff. So if we're going to talk about a temporary thing, and when we say temporary, do we mean we're going to sunset it in 3 years, or you just mean it's increasing the temporary quota cap?
Yeah, Ernie, it just means that we're increasing the cap on temporary shares that people can hold, not permanent. So permanent cap would still be 2%. We're just talking about increasing the temporary cap.
So they can have 2% permanent cap and
I
then
understand that,
rent
but this is
another
what you
2%.
have. You say temporary increase, that could mean you're temporarily doing it for a number of years, or it could mean you're just increasing the temporary quota itself.
Yeah, so it would mean for the calendar year, the amount of poundage they could hold in their name would be increased temporarily, just for the calendar year.
I think I'm being confusing. What I want to know is this. I'm fine with it doing it this year. I'm fine with doing it next year or the following year. You need like 3 years or something. But if we actually get the mission to pass, increase in the temporary cap, it will have to be lowered by them in the future if it needs to be.
Correct. If it becomes if we increase that temporary cap for the foreseeable future and the quota has some kind of drastic changes, it may be something we need to readdress in the future. And there's always an opportunity to do a combination too, that it could be, I'll just, 2.5% or X amount of pounds. Right, whichever one.
No problem. I just wondered which it was, and, you know, it's a lot easier to do something temporarily if you get somebody to sunset something, but if you just want it, this is basically a permanent thing until the commission acts differently.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Thanks, Ernie.
Anybody from the public?
Thank you.
Sure, I'll bet.
Come on up and state your name.
Charles Dryden, commercial fisherman. Yeah, go with the 4, but on the open it early, January 1st, don't do that. Because it'll be so many fish on the market, you won't be able to give them away. Because the way it is now, ever since we changed from February to 1st, the price has gone down. Because before, Maryland would be almost done, and then Virginia would come online, and the price would stay up. Soon as we went to the 16th, the price went down, and it stayed down, and it's not going up. So, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Good for you. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Anybody else? So what do you need from us, Adam?
Did we
Yeah,
continue on the motion?
we had a motion to go to 2% or to 4%.
That's what we're looking for input from this board, as well as any motion recommendations that might come out of it.
When you implement this, just a discussion on the motion, kind of. When you implement this, is there a way that you can put into regulation something, for instance, for the quota numbers, when the quota grows back up to this amount, which some people think it never will, but when the quota grows back up, that this gets revisited? However, I worry that that you put something like this into regulation, and we talk about it now, and then you talk about it in the commission meeting, and you say, well, when the quota goes up to 1.6 million pounds, we're gonna have to come back and revisit that.
So how about we try it 1 year?
Yeah, you could, yeah, so try it for 3 years or something like that.
Chris and George?
And we've had a 2% cap ever since 2010, so a 4% cap on there would.
2% was since the 90s.
2% since the 90s, but I'm here since 2010. A 2% cap is 30,000 pounds. 4% of the current quota is somewhere around 36, so this would increase the cap higher than really it's ever been in years.
I mean, no more fish is getting caught, it's just
You're just
people
splitting it
catching
different,
them.
that's it.
Splitting them
It's not
different.
Yeah,
changing
you're-
the
you're-
fishery.
We don't need a sunset, we just need a motion and put it in place if there's a problem later. I was here last October, a gentleman went over his quota, I can't remember what it was, 250 pounds, 400, okay?
It was 500, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, it went over 500. It was an accident. He had evidence. They ended up not, but he almost lost his privilege for 2 years. We have mechanisms in place to make sure we don't go over quota. People aren't going to go over quota just because they go to 4%. We're just shifting.
Yep, and to be honest with you, it wouldn't change anything, like Chris was saying. It would just honestly eliminate some transfers having to be done. Because right now what's happening is the fishermen are reaching their cap, and then they're just transferring to their mate or somebody else that wants to fish with them. If somebody can hold a little bit higher of quota, it would just eliminate extra excess transfers that have to be done because they can hold that weight themselves.
Less paper.
Just another interesting piece of this, there's a number of widowers that have their deceased spouse's quota and lease it out to watermen. That's just another piece I don't know what the percentage is, but there is quite a bit of it.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I second it.
All right. All in favor?
Can you restate the motion, please?
Raise it to 4%. Temporary, or, yeah, keep it at 2.
Temporary
To
transfer.
increase the temporary quota limit to 4% from the 2%.
So,
Yes.
so to clarify, just.
And
to
leave
make-
permanent at 2%.
So to clarify, just so I understand what it is, if you have 2% of the quota in your name, and you have 2% in your name, you could sell your 2% to him, and he's at 4%, and he's done buying quota from anybody else.
For the year.
For the
Leasing.
year.
Next year,
Leasing.
we
But
go
it's
back to
not
2%.
transferring his 2% and his 2%, so he's now got 6.
That's correct.
Okay, I just
You
wanted
can
to make
only,
sure.
you cannot own more than 2, but
Whether
you
it's
can borrow
permanent
more
or-
than 2.
It's, whether it's permanent or temporary, you cannot
So-
own more than 4.
So temporary transfer is another way to put it, is you borrow it for that year.
Yes, but you can only borrow till your total is 4.
Right.
That's just,
So all in favor?
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
not about how to get it.
5%.
You need them up again?
Anyone online's in favor?
No,
Will said aye.
I'm no.
All right, that motion passes 10 to 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, the commercial
Over the
amberjack and
transfers, if we go over our
spadefish.
quota, We face the wrath of Jill.
It still won't
I
be as
answered
bad as
no, I
what
don't know if you heard me or not.
Yep, we got you, Ernie.
Okay, thank you.
and they blatantly went over.
So good evening, everyone. It's been a while since I've spoken in front of all of you since shifting my job to VMRC. I've worked with all of you before, but I'm Joshua McGilly. I'm here to do a discussion for commercial amberjack and spadefish. This is kind of a similar presentation to what Ethan did, where I'm going to present you guys with some information. You guys can have a discussion, and then the committee can make some sort of decision on if the committee feels it's warranted to move this particular topic forward, or just kind of end it at the end of FMAC. So the topic for discussion is the use of a South Atlantic Unlimited Snapper Grouper Commercial Fishing Permit. I'm going to refer to it going forward as the SG1 permit within Virginia. So the SG1 permit is a limited entry permit that allows commercial harvesters landing in states in the South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council jurisdiction to have higher commercial catch limits for about 51 different species when fishing in federal waters. The permit can either be purchased or leased from a current permit owner. Mr. Todd Elder has brought up several times to VMRC the use of an SG1 permit to increase his landings in Atlantic spadefish and greater amberjack. This is just two of the laundry list of species that apply to the SG1 permit to increase his limits compared to the current regulations set commercially for both of these species. I would like to say up front, Virginia is not part of South Atlantic, so any quotas allotted to the South Atlantic do not apply to Virginia. South Atlantic starts at Virginia-North Carolina border and runs south to Florida Keys, so the entire Atlantic coast from North Carolina all the way down. Currently, there are quotas set for all 51 of these species. We do not report what our commercial landings are. We are not held to the South Atlantic quotas. We do not have the internal mechanisms to report to South Atlantic for most of these species. Some of South Atlantic species are jointly managed. Big two are cobia and Spanish mackerel. Spanish mackerel and cobia both have commercial quotas, which we are a part of. So we have the mechanisms to report for those commercial quotas. But the main difference between greater amberjack and Atlantic spadefish compared to cobia and Spanish mackerel is those two other species are jointly managed by ASMFC and South Atlantic. Amberjack and spadefish are just managed in federal waters by South Atlantic, which we're not a part of. So this table right here shows the quotas, seasons, and trip limits for South Atlantic, for greater amberjack and spadefish. So the feds set the limits. South Atlantic is the governing body from 3 miles out to 200 miles. So these are separate from any state quotas from North Carolina down to Florida. Greater amberjack has 2 separate seasons, so we actually just switched from the lower quota that starts in September 1st and goes through the end of February of 363,327 pounds. March 1st, it jumps up to 544,990 pounds runs to the end of August, with the full month of April being closed. Using the SG1 permit, you're allowed up to 1,200 pounds per day. Atlantic spadefish, a little bit more straightforward with a calendar year season, 150,552 pound quota, and no daily trip limit if you're using the SG1 permit. These are the VMRC limits that are currently put into place for commercial for both of these species. So greater amberjack is 2 per commercial card. You can have as many commercial cards as you would like on board, as long as the person holding the commercial card is on there. Each person is allowed 2. There is no boat limit. While Atlantic spadefish is 6 per commercial card holder when using hook and line per person. There is no daily catch limit if you're using any other commercial gear. They're not super applicable because we're talking about in federal waters, pound nets, drift gill nets. Those aren't really used to target spadefish offshore. It's mainly hook and line. So these are the commercial regulations that are currently in place that Mr. Elder is held to, landing within Virginia and the SG1 permit. The topic of discussion is to increase from these to the previous slide. Commercial landings for spadefish and amberjack from 2019 to 2024 I have up here. For spadefish, we see a kind of a slow decrease for most of the years. There is a slight increase from 2023 to 2024. Overall, it's a pretty small fishery. Amberjack is a extremely small fishery within Virginia. 3 of the 5 years listed, there's no landings reported in 2022, are confidential. So less than 3 commercial harvesters actually landed. So read it out. But in 2020 and 2021, there was 189 and 120 pounds respectively for those 2 years, with at least 3 people reporting landings. Just to give some reference to the recreational side, to give you a little bit more landings information. For the recreational Atlantic spadefish from 2019 to 2024, we see an increase from 2019 to 2021, with the highest being over 500,000 pounds in 2021, a real steep decrease, slight increase in 2023, and then our lowest landings in 2024 at just over 76,000 pounds. No recreational greater amberjack landings have been reported recreationally from 2019 to 2024. Traditionally, greater amberjack are targeted south, east of Rudy Inlet, the larger wrecks, kind of offshore structures east of North Carolina in the South Atlantic waters. Every now and then you may hear of people running into them on some of the wrecks that are teetering on the North Carolina, Virginia border. A little bit different with spadefish. We have runs of them every single year. It is towards the northern range, but we do see very large schools, some years larger than normal, larger than others. Probably has to do with them moving up north, and then depending on what time of the year and what they're feeding on moving into the bay, it can also dictate how successfully recreational and commercial anglers are actually catching them. So I wanted to get through that a little bit quick to get to the discussion part. So at this time, I'm opening to any questions anybody on the committee may have. I can answer any questions more about the SG1 permit. Mr. Todd Elder is here if anybody would like to ask any questions to him. And kind of at the end, we are just looking to see if the committee feels that this is warranted to move forward past tonight. So, anybody?
Josh, go ahead, question. The offshore wind farm, I believe it's gonna change the numbers big time. Is there any future science, looking into that, how it's gonna affect the numbers?
I sure wish I had a crystal ball for all of these types of things, and I'm sure most people at VMRC do wish. The answer is I don't know. We have a lot, being in where we are in Virginia, we have a lot of the southern species hitting their northernmost range, stuff like triple tail, sheep's head, amberjack, and spadefish, and then the northern, southernmost range for northern species. So we have a lot of crossover. We sometimes, as VMRC, we will put into place preemptive regulations, which is currently what we have in case we do start seeing those increases. If I were to guess, we probably will see a few more every year if everything lines up with that nice warm offshore water and all that structure off of there. Where they are being caught in large volumes is about 40, 60 miles. You probably have a better idea actually than I do, 40, 60 miles southeast of Rudy. So it is a quite a distance. It would be, a 40, 60 mile northern range expansion for a large number of fish. But if I had to guess, probably more will show up, but I'm not sure to what volume or when or if that will actually happen.
So if I remember correctly, spadefish have the 4-fish limit on the recreational fishery because recreational fishermen asked for it. And part of that was that when they get onto a structure, to be able to maintain it as a viable fishery over time. Again, I want to go out with the expectation of catching something and the hope of catching a trophy. And if you can go out there and catch 20 fish, because you can, and some people will do that, even though I don't know what you would want that many spadefish for. But the point being that we did this proactively, and I know you don't like proactive things when we try to do these things, to keep a better stock for the fishery for Virginia, because they move in, you can catch them up, and they move in. And I'm concerned that you're trying to open it up to more commercial fishing, which it is a de minimis commercial fishery on spadefish currently. And that's not compared to, that is a absolute, because you're only 5,000 pounds a year kind of number. And I'm against the concept of opening up the commercial fishery to get more and more harvest. It's focused as a recreational fishery, and I think it should stay that way.
Just to put a little more detail on that, and Tom was there, Mr. Powers was there, Ernie Bowden was there. The rest of the people aren't here, but it was either 94 or 99, we made this deal behind closed doors with Richard Welton to adopt commercially the same limits as recreational as a political deal, because CCA and the recreationals did want to be proactive with spadefish. Myself and about 2 or 3 other people were trying to build a commercial spadefish market, but to save our flounder fishery, which, hook and line, to save the hook and line bag limits we had, we made a deal that we wouldn't go after any more spadefish. It was not something that I agreed with at the time, and has been in my craw since then, because there is no scientific basis for it commercially. And I think Mr. Elder is an industrious guy, and I think he should get more than whatever it is, 4, 6, or 8 spadefish, especially because of the way it was handled way back when, mainly because of a commercial hook and line task force. If there's a federal quota in Virginia, the only reason it's de minimis is because we're hamstrung commercially to catch any more than we do, hook and line, rod and reel. So, that's my take on it. We bought into that unwillingly on the hook and line task force back then.
So just to address, the de minimis, the wording of de minimis really doesn't necessarily apply here. I understand your intention, Tom. We have very low landings.
It doesn't apply.
Yeah,
Very low landings
we are not
because of
held to any quota for either one of these species right now. The quotas that I put up are South Atlantic, which is in the reference to using an SG1 permit to land in Virginia, which we're not held to those quotas. We're not part of South Atlantic. We do not report our current landings. The landings that I put for both of these species are not reported to South Atlantic. We're not part of South Atlantic. So it might be 2 different conversations, and that's kind of going on right now.
So spadefish, is there a trip limit, federal? What is it?
Federally, right now,
No.
really would just
It's-
default, it would default to
It's
whatever you can
unlimited.
land in Virginia, which is with the hook and line, which I believe
It's 6
Mr.
fish.
Elder, yes, is using, is 6.
Okay, and any other commercial gear other than hook and line, we can keep 500 pounds, is that correct?
Yes.
You know, and I'm with Chris on this, you know, why, when you go hook and line fishing commercially, you're commercial as far as I'm concerned. And you should have the same ability as I have with the gill net to catch the same amount of fish, period. You know, if you want to catch 500 pounds, which I can catch in the gill net, the hook and line people should be able to do that. I have no problem with Mr. Elder bringing in 500 pounds, if that's what he wants to do. Any commercial hook and line fisherman ought to be able to use the same gear that I use. Have the same amount. As far as like a trip limit goes. You know, why we're stopping it, I don't know why.
Right now, we're just holding them to what the commercial hook and line specific is in place. Okay. Yeah, well, give me 1 second.
How many people would be under this SG1 permit?
Do you mean in Virginia specifically?
Yes.
The permit does not apply to Virginia.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why are we talking about it?
I agree.
Yeah.
We're talking about allowing a Virginia angler to fish in the EEZ in South Atlantic area and land in Virginia.
Yes. That
Is
is
that what we're
that
talking
that
about?
is the discussion. Yes, using the SG1 permit to land within Virginia. Yes.
And then going back to the question that that I have is, if he fishes in the South Atlantic, who's going to end up holding that fish caught against the quota? Is South Atlantic going to say, "Hey, Virginia, you caught these fish," or is it going to stay in South Atlantic? North Carolina going to eat that? I mean, you know, it goes back to an argument we had earlier this evening with you got somebody who has an SG1 permit, goes in the South Atlantic, catches a bunch of fish, no limit on spadefish, according to what I guess I understand here. He could catch 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 pounds, not likely, but he could catch that much, or 1,200 pounds of amberjack, where he would be able to catch 2 in Virginia, and then land in Rudy Inlet and land these fish. Whose quota does that go against? Not that we have one, but who gets the tap for that?
I don't really have an answer for that, Will, because we don't have the mechanism to report these 2 fish to South Atlantic in reference to using SG1.
Yeah, and then the question we often get at commission meetings, we're reminded by many groups who want us to vote their way, is about the greater good of the resource and et cetera, and is this a worthwhile measure to say, yeah, we can grant this SG1 permit to a few individuals or many individuals, when, you know, we have a very small commercial fishery compared to the South Atlantic, I guess. That's my problem with going forward with this. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Like VMRC's thoughts or the FMAC? I'm sorry, just I watch. Well,
thoughts in general. I mean, I'm all
Okay.
for commercial watermen to do more, but at some point, you, as an associate commissioner, you have to balance the goods of 1 or 2 or 3 against the possible unknown impact to our fishery. You know, Alex Perez brought up a point about coastal Virginia offshore wind, and you don't have a crystal ball. I get it. You know, I'm not sure. This doesn't sound good to me, but that's my opinion.
Josh, does this gentleman have the ability to report under that permit? I'm not familiar with that.
as far as I know, no, because he would be landing outside of the South Atlantic.
Okay, so when he would.
Would you like to? I'm not sure.
I'd like to speak, yeah,
Yep.
I would.
Okay.
All right, the SG1,
Okay, come up to.
record, just state your name and speak to the committee.
Thanks for taking the time. My name's Todd Elder. Yeah, I've been commercial fishing for 5 years now. Worst decision of my life. Pretty much spent all my money, so I'm broke. And I've attended meetings for the last month. Every week I've been going to meetings on the computer or in person. SG1, I never wanted an SG1. That was something that he doesn't work here anymore. He's retired or stepped away doing something else. Told me that I needed to get if I wanted to land more than 6 spadefish in the state of Virginia. So I started looking at options and saw, well, 1,200 pounds of amberjack. That seems like you can make some money doing that. So I was considering the leasing of an SG1 last year, and when I went to confirm with the person who no longer works here, he no longer worked here. And the new people said, actually, that doesn't apply, and you can't do that. So I have it in emails and whatnot, but he was wrong. So what I'd like to do is land more than 2 amberjack and 6 spadefish per trip in the state of Virginia. I don't think that's too crazy. And if I do need to lease an SG1 to do that, I will. That was where I went with the SG1. So for the record, I do not want to pay $8,000 a year to lease a SG1 to catch amberjack and spadefish.
Yeah, I got a question.
Any questions?
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you currently have a hook and line license?
I do, and I don't even want to hook and line them. And I heard you say something, and it sounded really good, because you said that I could use any other gear to harvest the spadefish 500 pounds. And I'm going to be spearfishing them. So I'm going to be spearing the fish. So it sounds like you solved my problem there.
Is that legal, the spearfish?
Yeah, I'm outside. I did it all last summer because they took away my experimental spearfishing permit last year. So I've been spearfishing in federal waters and landing it here in Rudy.
Is that legal? I mean, you have a commercial card, correct?
Yes, I have a commercial card. I have a commercial hook and line license. I have a bunch of other stuff. I have everything for the South Atlantic. So if I do lease the SG1, I will be reporting my landings as myself. So that will count towards North Carolina, though, because I'll be in that zone.
Yeah, it sounds to me, this is the staff, maybe we should look into an equalization of the hook and line license to the other commercial gear if we want to move forward. We want to forget about the SG permit.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Period. That to me doesn't apply at all.
That was just, someone put that idea in my head and I ran with it.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to make it work.
Because the other commercial gear uses 500 pounds, that's their trip limit. I feel like, hook and line license, that's not out of, the realm of things. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know what the committee or how I'm quite sure I know how one person feels about it.
Is that in reference just to,
That's just a spadefish. I know more about spadefish.
Yeah,
than
the
amberjack.
greater amberjack is 2 regardless of gear type, and
Yeah.
In reference to what Mr. Elder said with spearfish, normally spearfish does default to the hook and line regulations.
It does default to it, okay. Yeah, like I said, we should look at the hook and line fishery, and allowing them to be able to catch 500 pounds. That's my opinion. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about it, but it seems to me like we're not utilizing a fishery or a fish that would benefit commercial fishermen.
Did we want to do it as a motion? Do we want to?
I mean,
I'm not, however the
I'd like to
committee
hear
would
some
like to move forward with this.
I'd like to hear some discussion from the
Okay.
committee.
Chris wants to say.
Do you have anything else, Mr. Todd?
Yeah, I'd like to increase, I'd like to have a conversation about increasing the amberjack limit as well. I mean,
Can we handle one species at a time? I think that would be best.
Yeah.
Let's do spadefish
Yeah.
first. Do y'all agree? Staff good with that? Okay, let's
I think
handle
there's way too
Spadefish
many other
first.
issues with the amberjack, and we should not focus on that right now.
Yep.
So if it was a motion, I would support it, but my feeling is, yeah, that he should, you know, and the commercial line, hook and line, you know, gear type, as well as Mr. Elder, you know, should have that, you know, 500-pound limit. Is it like any other gear type?
And that is just for spadefish.
Right, yep.
There is some confusion coming from the committee as well, so just a couple of things to, the SG1 permit, we do not, as a state of Virginia, participate with the South Atlantic, so those permits would not apply in Virginia, so I think we're clear on that. There is no 500-pound daily catch limit on spadefish.
Oh, see, I was under the
We don't have
impression.
that, but we
Yeah.
do.
Maybe
there
I'm
is-
thinking,
There is a commercial hook and line limit on Atlantic spadefish that those spearfishing in commercial hook and line are held to. So there's just some clarifications on information that is bouncing around very quickly.
Okay, so there is no 500-pound trip limit.
Correct. You get me, if you're in a pound net or a haul seine, you don't have that 500 pound.
Okay.
Make sure, I'd have to look that up.
Okay,
real
see,
quick while
I don't know,
was talking.
I thought there was a 500-pound trip limit. Maybe I'm thinking sheep's head.
So it is just 6 fish,
It is 6 fish with
No
that
matter what
commercial
gear.
hook and line.
no, any gear.
No, with any gear, if you're fishing gill net or pound net
It's
or haul
unlimited.
seine,
Limited.
they don't have a limit. It's specific for
It's unlimited.
commercial
I
hook
was
and
thinking-
line, which the spearfish is treated the same as any other hand gear.
Where's the paperwork or regulatory, where's the code that tells you about that?
It wasn't, it came out of the task force
For-
meeting.
For spearfishing, like, because there's no information that says we fall in line with hook and line for spearfishing.
I can get, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
We can get that for the committee, but just to set the stage on where we're at and where, this was a request from Mr. Elder to look at, and one of the things we've talked about was we don't really participate with the SG1, but I think Mr. Elder has also been very interested in what are the bounds of that commercial hook and line license and or spearfishing, and if this committee feels the need to increase those or do anything with those, and where to go from there.
So there's no limit.
There's no limit on any other gear type,
Yeah.
daily limit.
So make it the same.
But it would apply to hook and line license only. At this time, the committee would not handle spearfishing unless we decided to.
I mean,
Is
there's
that
nothing
correct?
really to handle. It falls in line with the hook and line, so, I mean, I'm just landing my fish here. I mean, I'll catch them hook and line if I got to.
So, I mean, the real issue from 1999 or whenever it was, that people are concerned about, or were concerned about then, and I suspect they're still concerned about it, is these spadefish are localized species. Now, when we get these wind farms out there, and there's hundreds of wind
They're out
turbines,
there.
when we get evidence that the spadefish
I
are-
could provide you plenty of evidence, sir.
That's fine, provide it to staff. When they get evidence that they can support it, right now, there are a limited number of offshore wrecks that these things go to, recreational fishermen key in on. And the concern when we did this was that those places get fished out quickly. That's why the recreational fishery went to a small bag limit on spadefish, is to stop people from going out there and just,
What day,
decimated locally.
would you support a daily poundage, Tom?
I don't know what I would support at this point in time. I think that the real key here is that we need to understand, how things could coexist where it's not, I go out into the flats and when I go fishing in the flats, I round the corner at Plumtree Island, and I see crab pots everywhere. I get happy because I know that area didn't get hauled last night. Because I know if it got hauled last night, I'm gonna have not a good day, I'm gonna go someplace else. And it's the same thing here, where we're talking about these offshore wrecks, which are offshore, light lighthouses and wrecks and stuff that people fish for spade fish on. And there's a lot of people with nice boats that go out there. I don't, because I have a teeny boat, but, and if we end up with people, you know, basically decimating things locally, then we're back in the same thing. We don't have the expectation.
I agree with Mark, it's an underutilized species. We don't have any,
Not underutilized, there's
It is-
hundreds of thousands of pounds caught recreational.
Yeah, I'm outside.
I'm talking about utilized commercially for the general public to be able to have a meal that Mr.
Marlin
Elder
are
provides.
underutilized commercially.
You know,
interested in it all, man.
And in spear fishing, if you're within state waters, there's no spear fishing. If you're outside of state waters, you can spearfish. The hook and, this is a 6 per commercial card, we're using hook and line in state waters because you can't spearfish. So if you're outside of state waters, that 6 does not apply. So there is a nuance to this on what gear types Mr. Elder wants to use, which gear types this committee wants to be able to use to increase commercial landings if they feel they should. So there's a lot of different discussions to go on that may not be solved tonight. But part of what we need to do is, do we want to move this forward and continue to talk about this as a committee and find a resolution? We probably will not find a complete puzzle piece that with all the solutions tonight, but does this committee think that this conversation is worthwhile to push forward, to start exploring whether or not we should increase limits for commercial hook and line for these species and what the limits maybe should be for other gears? That's more of the core of this conversation versus trying to solve the problem tonight.
I think this is just the beginning. Maybe in a year, we're gonna talk about what are the limits on mangrove snapper and the stone crabs.
There are mangroves out there.
There are, and there's stone crabs.
So I'm hearing a consensus from this committee that maybe this is something that's warranted for more conversation and to bring this back at the next meeting. But that is something that you could make a motion on it to bring it back at another meeting for more discussion on this. This was more of a topic to see if it's something that this committee wanted to entertain. And by consensus, it sounds like some members do. But I think that's where we're at versus trying to actually solve all the problems to here and come up with a limit. I don't think that's realistic in a 15-minute meeting, but it at least gives the staff some direction on where to carry this conversation and bring it back to me.
So would it make sense for a motion for staff to come up with a recommendation for spadefish and
I'll
amberjack?
make a motion.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we look into, allowing spadefish to be caught hook and line commercially. And I was under the impression it was 500 pounds. I was actually thinking of sheep's head. It's the 500-pound limit. To go ahead and possibly have some kind of landing limit for spadefish with a hook and line license.
Okay. Now,
Oh, sorry.
Is there a second?
sorry about that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
We also talked about any gear type, not just hook and line.
Yeah.
And I think that's something.
Does it make a difference?
We need to leave that alone, because there are pound netters that on occasion do catch more than 500 pounds.
And we don't have a limit right now on them anyway, so
Yeah.
this is really the only thing we have a limit on is that commercial hook and line. So,
Can we just make that across the board?
No.
so.
No, I meant like
It's,
unlimited.
I think that this is just a question of what we're going to discuss in the future, not what
Correct.
we're going
So
to decide.
we've got a motion on the table to look at increasing the commercial hook and line limit and what that might look like specifically for spadefish. So we've got a motion on the table, and I believe that was seconded by Mr. Ludford. Maybe call the question on that vote.
Everybody in favor?
We've got 6. Anyone online in favor of further discussion on this?
I'm in favor, Arnett.
Okay. And anyone opposed?
I think we should leave it like it is.
I've got 1 on the table. Anyone online opposed?
Yeah, I oppose, Will.
Okay. All right, so I've got that motion passing 7-2 with staff taking a look at what a limit might be in bringing this conversation back to this committee on specifically maybe a hook and line limit commercially for spade fish.
It was actually 500 pounds.
500 pounds. I'm sorry, I'll clarify that.
The
was
reason I
trying
want to
quick-
go with 500 pounds is because we also have that on sheep's head.
All right. Thank you, that's extremely helpful.
And just let us know if you need any committee participation.
Absolutely.
Or Mr. Elder.
Absolutely. We have Mr. Elder, and he's been extremely helpful through all this as well, so. All right, thank you. I think on the agenda, we still have.
Adam, could I ask one thing? Would it be a good idea for the next FMAC to talk about what other species that are showing up here from the south, like stone crab and mangrove snapper, to just begin the discussions on what do we do? Are there recreational limits for these? Are they gonna be included as a Virginia, Chesapeake Bay fish, et cetera?
I've got it written down.
Yep. Might as well throw Kubera on there too. Kubera snapper.
All right, I believe you still have public comment as well on the agenda. Is that next good?
Yeah.
Having it in front of me.
Excuse me, Adam, while we're on that, in the last meeting, you all were supposed to bring something on tarpon forth for this meeting.
I remember that.
That's actually in the minutes.
And we don't have anything available yet, so I apologize. I have that written up and everything. We need a less busy agenda to be able to bring that forward. We had 4 things on this agenda, as you can tell. Struggling to get through that.
Combine that with the discussion on the other species that were discussed.
Yes, I had that tarpon recommendation.
Do we have public comment on items not on the agenda?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Go ahead, come on.
John Balderson. I want to first say appreciate the adjustment on the temporary transfer cap. I think we needed that. I got a question and I'm not sure how to address it, but on January the 23rd, I emailed the staff wanting to put in front of you guys the possibility of adjusting our rockfish season from the 1st instead of the 16th, starting earlier. And I thought it was gonna be put on the agenda for this meeting, and I guess it wasn't. So my question is, how do I get that in front of you guys to be able to get this discussed? I think it's a very important topic, and I'm not sure where I need to go for this.
You meant January?
Starting January the 1st instead of the 16th.
Touched on that earlier.
So this is something that we received from John as well as a few other fishermen on the possibility of opening this up on January 1st. We had an internal staff meeting to try and figure out logistics. As you all know, there's a huge administrative turnaround on closing out one season and starting the other. There are a few ideas on how to open up maybe 1 or 2 days, but I believe rather than rushing this in front of FMAC, it needs a little bit more thought. A lot of the way this fishery operates was put in 2007. It hasn't been touched in 20 years. It's probably something we need a little broader look on, not just that start date, but also logistics on administration burdens and being able to turn that around. So it's not a request that's been ignored or a request that's fallen off the radar. We had a tight agenda on this, and this is something that wouldn't be addressed until the earliest, the 2027 season. So it's not something that's been ignored. It's just been moved to a further down agenda so that we can get our arms around maybe some other things that need to be adjusted as the season goes on. So all that to say is it is something that can be looked at, but that administrative burden on the tight turnaround from season to season, there's not a lot of room in there. So other things and logistics might have to change versus just throwing it in front of this committee.
If I remember correctly, it was February 1st, and then it got moved to January 16th. And there was a lot of discussion from staff about the logistics, and it's in FMAC minutes, and I would suggest you go find those and have staff look at those too, because it's a logistical nightmare to try to get it all done. To get the old tags off the street and the new tags on the street and have them one day.
I think we got a comment online.
Ernie or Will, did y'all have a comment?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Adam, there's another question. You guys received a couple emails from watermen about, because of the ice further up some of the rivers like the Rappahannock and York, the email requests were about extending the 26-inch maximum size or 28-inch maximum size from March 15th on for those watermen that work in the upper rivers that had the ice.
This was brought up at the February commission meeting through public comment. The commission did have a pretty good discussion about the pros and cons of opening that up. Ultimately, the commission, because we don't have time to advertise it, would have to act through emergency regulation, and there was no motions to make any kind of emergency regulatory changes to that.
Was there anybody else? Go ahead.
Can I make a motion to put it on the next Finfish committee about opening the season early? So we could discuss it next time?
We can put that on our, I don't know if you need a motion or not, but we did something that's on our radar, and we can get that on the agenda to start
Okay,
talking about.
before, early enough, so.
Correct, this is not something that we could really implement till 2027, because 2026, so we do have a little bit of time and chunk, and some of these, like black sea bass, we needed a little bit more.
You said 2028.
2028. Well, let's see what we need to start that conversation to see if it's reliable, if it's something we can do in 27, if there's more changes we need to make for 2028. But some things like black sea bass.
Would that
need
change
a
in
little more
regulations have to go through the town hall process?
I can touch on that. So with the new administration,
Tell me the town hall's dead.
VMRC no longer needs to have executive oversight through the town hall website.
We can all
Which means
applaud
we
now.
can
Thank you.
promulgate
That's the
regulations.
best thing you could have said.
With a 2-week public notice, so that speeds up
Back to
our
the same.
ability to react to natural resource.
Thank
We
you.
still need to use town hall to be able to post things like meetings and be able to post notices on wetlands boards and oyster ground leases, but as far as executive oversight, we no longer need to participate with town hall, which allows a little bit quicker for us to be able to react to these natural resource needs.
Just one quick, the other thing we want to make sure, and it's in the notes, because I'm sure this is being recorded, or at least the notes are being taken. We had a waterman earlier, Mr. Dryden, that said he would be opposed to that. So, and I know, I'm just saying, we need to talk amongst ourselves, the watermen as well. You know, so we don't put staff through a bunch of hoops and not have a majority of support from the watermen and waterwomen.
You got one more from the public?
Good evening, I'll be short. Monica Shinneman. I just want to put on public record that all the watermen think Jill is amazing, okay? Everyone loves her, she does an unbelievable job, that does need to be stated. Really, the question here is what can we find to help her help us? You know, what is the model that the other states are using? Instead of just doing the same thing, which would be extremely difficult to change the result of the outcome, you know, because it is a loss of about 15 days of harvest time. So we just want to get the quota in the hands of the fishermen and help Jill at the same time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Did you have one more?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Back to the amberjack, and I wanted, you said add species or whatever that you want to increase limits on, cobia as well. I wanted to see the data that Josh put up there showing the quota allotted to Virginia for cobia. I don't think the commercial quota's been met for some years now, so I was wondering if that could be part of the discussion to increase the limit of 2 cobia for a commercial card holder. Also, in public comment, I had a experimental spearfish permit for 4 years. It was, they decided that it wasn't gonna be renewed last year. So that's kind of motivated me to show more interest into outside 3 miles. I wanted to ask all of you, would you be in favor of commercial fishermen spearing in Virginia state waters? I asked that question in 2021, and the majority of the commission was in agreement that they were in favor with it.
I've got a question. Has staff talked about this anymore since his permit was taken away or denied?
This is something we can talk about as well with Mr. Elder. Originally, so we do a scientific gear permits to look at new gears, emerging gears, and whether or not we can establish a fishery. This is a scientific collection permit that we had issued for quite a few times. After a few years of having it, it was just one person participating. It didn't have a lot of long-term aspects to an emerging fishery. One of the other ones we look at is the new gill net for Spanish mackerel, having those longer, and that was one that was successful. We've done this through looking at electrofishing, we've done this looking at shrimping, and there's been long-term aspects of these fisheries, and this was one that, looking through internal review, that it didn't have any long-term aspects, and we weren't getting enough data out of it to prolong it. So that I think was last year, 2024 or 2025.
2025 was not renewed.
2025 is when we did that, review of it. So that was part of the review and determination, and it's the same review and determination we do on all emerging fisheries or experimental gear, so it's not necessarily specific to this one.
Can I speak on that?
Sure.
So basically, I'm one guy spearfishing out there, which I understand they don't want to create a new regulation for or whatever, so that's why I was going the experimental route. But how difficult is it to just allow it, just make it a type of gear for that to be an option for a commercial fisherman to go out there? Like Mr. Ludford said, the average age for a commercial fisherman in Virginia is in 60 or close to 60. So how many guys are gonna get in the water and shoot fish? Maybe not a lot now, but once it's a gear and the younger guys hear about it, sure, they're gonna utilize it. For me, it's super efficient, and looking at their side, trying to see their side of it, I think of myself as a huge asset for the Resource Commission. I can video nonstop of what's going on under there. I mean, what species are there? Structure, debris, fishing debris. So I don't understand why you would not want to try to help the dying breed of commercial fishermen.
Have you talked to staff again to try to reapply for the experimental permit?
This year, I have mentioned it, and
Maybe-
basically in 2023, they were hinting that they didn't want to renew it. And so they did it again in
Can I make
2020.
a suggestion to you? Reapply, see what they say, and then if you feel like, you really want to move forward with this, maybe talk to staff and possibly bring it back before Finfish again.
Yeah.
That's a suggestion.
I mentioned it with Commissioner Geist over the phone about a month ago. So that's
Like
the
I said,
only
I'll
thing
come
for
in
this
here
year.
Talk to them.
Yes, sir. Can we touch back on the amberjack and cobia increase limits? No. Just like, what's the protocol to get the ball rolling with this?
It's already rolling.
Okay,
Probably add that, it would probably go along with the conversation with Spadefish.
okay.
So I'm assuming staff might tackle that as well.
So is that at the next meeting with you guys, or I need to go to the VMRC meeting?
I think they'll contact you,
As always, we'll work on an agenda and try and get the most pertinent information that needs to go regulatory-wise in front of this committee,
Yeah.
and work things in when we have more available time as well. So it's already rolling in the right direction. It's clear this committee wants to look at it in some kind of realm. It's just a matter of finding the correct agenda, but this would be the appropriate place that it comes back to.
Okay, thank you for your time.
If you stick around, I'll talk to you about cobia as objectively as I can, because they already have, and actually there are some science-based limits on what they're doing commercially for the commercial limits for cobia.
Okay.
All right. Is that everything?
That's all I have on my agenda.
Wait a minute, we got one more.
Good evening. My name's Nathan Everett. It's been talked about twice already, 3 times, this striped bass thing. I noticed that George made a motion to push that to the commission, but then there got to be some discussion. I just wanted to make sure we got like a title on that, like what exactly are we pushing to the commission? And with that being said, I appreciate the vote that you guys made on increasing the temporary cap for striped bass, temporary transfers. But it seems that more than once it's been brought up that it's been 20 years since anyone took a real hard look at the striped bass fishery. And that's the problem in that particular fishery, but it's also the problem with a lot of other finfish fisheries as well. I don't know the title or whatever the procedure is from your point of view that you have to call it to make sure that these fisheries are adjusted on a as-needed basis or a scheduled basis, but we need to consider that every time in all things. Ignoring the striped bass fishery for 20 years and doing nothing but have the fishermen that are still barely surviving in it because of the restrictions, which is the only thing that has happened in 20 years. I could go on with a long list of gill net sizes, quota decrease, you name it. I mean, they're all in one direction. We're here to see that it not really gain back anything, but just maintain, where we need to be. And I've heard a lot of people, especially particular staff, mention how fisheries don't have a future. They deem it as too small. If you don't allow people to work, if you don't give it a title, if you don't actually pursue the helping of these fishermen, they're not going to come to this industry. Period. If all they see are restrictions, if all they see are blank pages when they have a gear type that they want to use to go after fish, where do they even start? That's in your hands. This committee, this is your job to make sure that that happens. And that comes back to another thing. We're really not sure how much power you have as fishermen. We bring stuff to you. We wonder where it actually goes from here, or how if it even makes it to the commission. So I'm asking all of that and kind of going back to, let's put a title to what George's motion was and make sure that gets to the commission to look at the striped bass fishery at the very least as a whole and try to get something done by 2027, 2028, and increasing that season to one continuous season, where the fishermen can fish when the fish are there and not jamming everybody up to the last minute to where they're catching and worried about catching that breeding stock. I mean, that's your problem, and we're asking for the solution. By the way, Mr. Powers, please hear me. We're asking for a solution to not catch the stuff that you're worried about. So that the decision is in your hands. Just push it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if that's it, we'll have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All right.
An observation, the commercial fishermen that are coming up are not 65 years old.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Ernie.